Oh yeah, this is Cal Cat, the Cal Catster, and this is a review of Star Trek Discovery Season 3, That Hope Is You Part 2. This Hope Is... Yeah, This Hope Is You Part... has a guy named Cal in it. Yeah, of course it does. Their basic premise is that this part is the Discovery landing in Iceland, in the ice, and the Discovery crew has to repair the ship. They recover Stamets and some of the other people. They don't realize, of course, that Stamets and some of the other people were in Silly Trek for a while, but then were pulled out, and then they had to put him back in a coma to have him be in the episode. So, anyway, to make that make sense with Kirk and everybody. So he wakes up and he's like, "Oh wait, I was in Silly Trek and I met this Cat Hazel guy and John Holter guy." And, yeah, and we hung out with the Enterprise. That didn't happen, but it did in the Silly Trek version. Because, while they were in the Time Warp. They put them back, and crashed the ship. They crashed the ship on an ice planet, asteroid, planetoid. I almost gave it away last week. Planetoid, the ice is slowly crushing the ship. But it's parasitic ice, which doesn't make any sense, really. But anyway, there's they send Saru and Tilly go to the weird space bar through the teleporter to go interact with, to get some stuff to repair the ship, programmable matter that they don't know about. They meet up with these two aliens. One of them's name is Cal, of course. The other one's something else. That wasn't me playing him, but that was somebody playing me, which is surreal. Of course, he gets blasted because it's funny. I blast my character like immediately, but with a really, really slow blaster that just kind of melts this armor thing. Okay, it wasn't me. It was somebody playing me. Anyway, so this bad guy dude shows up. Kind of looks like Michael Douglas. And he wants to plug them all and kill them, but he wants to kill them all. But then he's like, and the ship. He wants to kill the ship too, and tells him about the parasitic ice, so that gives him motivation to actually succeed. Why are villains always doing this? Giving them motivations to succeed. So we have. Meanwhile, who's the Admiral lady and Stamets are trying to fix the EPS conduit. There's like a device in the Jeffries tube that's messed up. You gotta go fix it. Incidentally, they weren't called Jeffries tubes until the time of April, but we'll forgive them for that. They were named after Jeffries, who was Robert April's officer on the Constitutional Class Enterprise in the 2250s. I guess it kind of links up, but kind of doesn't. But they're named after Matt Jeffries, actually, the Matt Jeffries, the production guy, original classic Trek. They named tubes after him, which is why in the Silly Trek version there's the Cal lift instead of the turbo lift, named after the Cal Cat. This is a different device. So we have our heroes trying to get the ship working again. Basically, it's get the ship working again scenario. Very, very Sillian story. I didn't write it, but it sure seems like something I would write. They put the ship back together. It's very similar, actually, to Corrosion War of That End as well, which was an old Transformer story that we did, where there's a crashed ship and they had to figure out how to get off the planet. Very similar to that. You could almost say that they watched Corrosion and then did this episode. And Corrosion was several months ago, so yeah. And there was a attack thing at a bar, a space bar, very similar to Transtech, way back. But yeah, that's a typical cowboy western thing anyway. It was basically a western at that point when they were in the bar. Tilly gets to hit somebody over the head with a bottle. But Giorgio follows them, and she fights the bad guys, because they had to have somebody that could fight the bad guys show up and fight the bad guy. The villain basically, their buddy is basically the mercenary villain. Giorgio is back. She went with the ship with them. Spoilers. Well, it's clear from the preview, because they gave it away in their own preview, that the alien ship that eventually comes for them to rescue them is totally the commander lady, and it has been a year to her. It's been a year, so this episode takes place in 3189, so a year after the other story. So we jumped ahead. So yeah, during that year they were in Sillian space. They didn't know it, but they were in Sillian space, and then they were put back in the time warp. Totally works. It's canon. Oh yeah. So yeah, they had to get put back in stasis with their ship all screwed up from the warp thing because yeah, it was partly the space virus that did that. Yeah, why was the ship all messed up? Yeah, well, it was all messed up because it was in Sillian space for a year, running around. That's why. Also, the Calypso story has no bearing in this universe. The Calypso story was another discovery that goes 1,000 years, waits for 1,000 years, whereas this one didn't wait for 1,000 years; it was transported there to a different period. So there's another ship out there. The technology is still not so advanced that it isn't recognizable, though. And given 1,000 years, it would be, because if you think back 1,000 years, in the Middle Ages, you not only wouldn't be able to communicate with anybody, you wouldn't be able to, you would get their diseases and they would get yours. And yeah, everything would be completely different. It would be accused of witchcraft and stuff because you'd have like a cell phone or eyeglasses, or you'd have cotton garments or something. They think that you were polyester. They think that you were a warlock or a witch or something. Yeah, very Halloween. A Halloween type of episode. And so we have the captain coming to say that they gave it away in the preview. They shouldn't have done that. But yeah, it's awfully convenient that she knew where they were, went after them, found them. But yeah, if it was Silly Trek, it would totally make sense. So it's using silly space logic, Starship Locations logic to save itself. Yeah, I don't know how good an idea that is for them to do that, because ours is a fictional parody of Star Trek. It's not supposed to be used as plot devices in your story, because it works for Lower Decks, because that's a parody. In case you didn't know, Lower Decks is also a parody of the 2380s. This is a parody of the 3180s, late 3180s. Currently in TNG time in 2020. We're living in 2397, I believe. So we haven't jumped a year into the future. 2397, 33 years after TNG started. So we're actually counting the numbers. 27 years after Deep Space Nine, 1993, 26 years. Voyager, 20 years. Yeah. 25 years for Voyager. 24 and a half years, because it's like 1995. Yeah, 25 years for Voyager. 27 years for DS9, that's right. Roughly my story in brief thing. Yeah, was it a good episode? Yeah, it was good. It wasn't bad. I know that core Trek Yards people were complaining a little, but it is considerably better than the Midnight's Edge was claiming it was. Considerably better than Midnight's Edge claimed it was. And so yeah, there's the stupid phone ringing. That's gonna screw this up. So as I wrap this up, the crew gets back together and they meet up with the commander. Commander, she's a commander. And they reference Leland, but I don't think that bad guy was supposed to be Leland at the end. They kind of implied it. Maybe they intended for him to be him, but that would be weird. Yeah. If that was supposed to be, that kind of doesn't work, because they would recognize him as the other bad guy. That they called him, they call him Sillian. They called him Sarah. That's what they called him. They called him Zara. Yeah, with a Z. Zara. Yeah. Of course they did, because that ties into... And another thing that sounds a little like Zuri, and he looked a little like Raxler from Starcrackers. That's ours too. Space Vanguards, which it's called now, was Starcrackers, the fan film. We had to change the name for obvious reasons. And yeah, when we released the film is still called Starcrackers online. The film still called that back in the day, the fan film. But the storybooks had to be renamed Space Vanguards. And they had to be Space Vanguards and not Vanguards to confuse it with Vanguard and Star Trek Vanguard, which were some other story properties. Even there, we had to change the name to the ship, and that's what we did. So yeah, there's a lot of references to "if with no interruptions, it will be glorious." And yes, so keep watching Star Trek Discovery Season 3,